Hello everyone, and welcome to my weapon review of the Zireael Dual Blades. These are the new Witcher collaboration weapon that we got with the release of the Ancient Leshen. He's really tough, so if you want to unlock these dual blades, you're really going to have to work for them. They're also a pretty nice pair of dual blades, replacing the Devil Joe dual blades and the Diablos dual blades. Okay, so we're going to be having two different options for when you build with these. You're going to have a raw option, and you're going to have a dragon damage option as well. Let's go ahead and do a side-by-side comparison of the Zireael dual blades and the Diablos clubs. Is it Zireael or is it Zireael? I don't play The Witcher, so I don't actually know. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at the attack values. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at the attack values. Let's go ahead and take a look at the attack values. Zireael has an attack value of 294. Diablos clubs has an attack value of 322. That's a big difference in terms of attack. I believe that's 28. I believe that's 28. 6 plus 22 is 28. Yeah, so it's actually a large difference, but here's the deal. Take a look at those sharpness bars. What we know about the Diablos clubs is that you have to have about 5 levels of handicraft in order to get that small white sharpness bar. Whereas over on the Zireael, you have base white sharpness, and it's actually a larger white sharpness bar anyways. That's going to play a big difference between the two weapons, because if Zireael is maintaining white sharpness, it's getting the white sharpness damage multiplier, whereas if Diablos clubs is losing its white sharpness at some point, you're going to have to sharpen your weapon, and you're really losing a lot of damage at that point. Whether you resharpen, see, if you resharpen at all, that just costs time. And then if you don't resharpen and you just stay in the blue sharpness, you're not getting the damage multiplier. So the white sharpness is playing a pretty big role here. And the fact that Zireael doesn't have to build 5 levels of handicraft means it's going to be able to prioritize critical eye and peak performance. See what I'm saying here? So those are both really big deals. Alright, after that, they both have a hidden element. Since we're only comparing them as raw elementalist builds, it doesn't really matter. You know, Dragon of 240, Ice of 90, it doesn't matter. And then finally they both have a large, Zireael has a large decoration slot, Diablos clubs has a medium decoration slot. You can work with either of them, it's not a big deal, but technically the large decoration slot on the Zireael is a better option. And then with the augmentations, Diablos clubs has 2 augmentations. However, since it has negative 10% affinity, one of those augmentations is going to be used to bring it up to 0% affinity. That essentially allows it to tie with Zireael. However, here's the difference. Zireael is boosting itself up to 10% affinity with this one augmentation slot. If Diablos clubs wants to try and copy that, the best it's going to be able to do is bring itself up to 5% positive affinity, because as you know, there's diminishing returns when you're augmenting a weapon. So the first augmentation brought it up to 0, the second augmentation is only going to bring it up to 5. So I'm going to say that Zireael actually has an advantage with affinity as well, but it's only an advantage of 5%. Now I'm going to be showing you an optimized elementalist dual blade build, and you'll notice that we have critical eye 7, attack boost 4, which is giving us 5% affinity. We have health boost 3, you can actually turn that into attack boost 7. We have critical boost 3, weakness exploit 3, that's really important obviously. Well, look at that, we have peak performance. So this is, once again, this is what's really making the Diablos clubs and the Zireael dual blades very different from each other. Zireael has that base handicraft, white handicraft bar, right? Diablos clubs is building the handicraft charm, and then it's still needing 2 levels of handicraft. That's kind of a big deal. At that point, you're going to be taking Kushala de Aura Coil for those 2 levels of handicraft that is missing. And at that point, you're just not going to have the same damage output, because Zireael's getting the plus 20 attack from peak performance. And it really comes down to how good are you at keeping peak performance active. So if you're really good at keeping peak performance active, then you really do have a large advantage with the Zireael dual blades. And then once again, the size of the handicraft bars matters as well. The white sharpness on the Zireael is larger than the white sharpness on the Diablos clubs. So the Diablos clubs realistically are going to have to sharpen at one point in the fight, and Zireael is going to be able to go on longer in many fights without having to sharpen, and that's going to be a big advantage. So when we look at the affinity is coming out to 45% with the augmentation, and with weakness exploit proccing for an additional 50%, that's 95% affinity. That's pairing very well with Master's Touch, and you're just keeping your white sharpness longer than the Diablos clubs, and you're using that peak performance as well. It is now the best elementalist dual blades in the game. Just another reason to go fight the Ancient Leshen. But that's not the only comparison we're going to be making today. These happen to be a dragon elemental damage weapon as well. You have to unlock it though, right? So let's go ahead and compare the Zireael to the Wrathful Predation. That's the Devil Joe dual blades, right? And this time the attack difference between the two weapons is much smaller. So Wrathful Predation has, 14 more attack. However, once again, we run into that issue where Zireael has base white sharpness, Wrathful Predation does not. Wrathful Predation is going to be building the Handicraft Charm because it's the most advantageous way to build Handicraft for the Wrathful Predation. And in that case, it's actually going to even out a little bit, because what's going to happen on Zireael is you're going to have to build the free element charm to unlock the dragon element. As you can see, it's not locked on Wrathful Predation, so it's pretty close. However, here's the funny thing. For Wrathful Predation, it runs into two issues. First of all, the dragon element on Zireael is going to have a higher ceiling than it will on Wrathful Predation. The second issue is that Wrathful Predation has negative 20% affinity. Ouch. So what you can do is you can take an affinity augmentation to bring it to negative 10, and then another affinity augmentation to bring it to negative 5%. Meanwhile, Zireael has positive 10% with this one affinity augmentation. So it ends up with the 15% affinity advantage, and the large decoration slot on the Zireael, the base decoration slot, that's going to be used for your third level of free element, bringing your dragon element up to 240. So once again, we're dealing with just better base stats for the Zireael than for the previous dragon damage meta. It's marginal though, it's very close. I feel like with the Diablos clubs it was not as close, but here I feel like it's actually pretty close. Let's go ahead and take a look at an optimized dragon damage build on the Zireael dual blades. So this time, once again, we're headed toward that Master's Touch build. We're using the Teostra Gamma set this time. Turned out that set is really much more valuable than we give it credit for, especially for the dual blades. Dual blades really love this set. So we have Kaiser Crown Gamma, Kaiser Vambraces Gamma, and Kaiser Greaves Gamma. This is giving us Master's Touch, right? It's also giving us Critical Eye, which is really convenient as well, because Critical Eye is especially relevant to dual blades, who they can't really take advantage of maximum might, so they don't need the medium decoration slots as much as they need small decoration slots for Critical Eye. Just a side note for those of you who don't use dual blades a lot. And then we're using Rathalos Male Beta and Azure Starlord Tassus Alpha in order to build Critical Element. The Azure Starlord Tassus Alpha are giving us a little more handicraft. We don't technically need it, but it is actually helpful because we're not reaching 100% affinity, so we're going to be losing a little bit of sharpness as we go along. In fact, with the Devil Joe dual blades, you're going to be losing sharpness even faster, because as we know, that 15% affinity difference is going to be playing a big role with that. And with that being the case, once again, with the Zireael dual blades, there's a good chance you're going to be finishing your fight without having to sharpen, or you just go longer without having to sharpen. It really depends on what you're fighting. Some fights are really extended and long, some are very short, and often when we're comparing two weapons for like a quote meta, we're often questioning like, what can a speedrunner do with it? Can they finish the fight before they have to sharpen? Right, so that's really important to us. You can also see we're able to build up 3 levels of dragon attack. A free element, as I said, will be coming from the Awakening Charm, and one level of free element is going into the actual Zireael dual blades, and then we have crit boost and weakness exploit. Nothing really surprising. The only problem I have with this build is that for players who wanted to play more casually, there's really no way to build for defense here. So you'll really want to have to go dragon attack, and you're not going to have that much defense. If you're fighting something like the Behemoth, realistically, it would be nice to have at least Vitality, I would say. For most players, Vitality. If you're really good, Vitality, I suppose, doesn't matter in that case. You know, alternatively, what you could be doing here is you could have the Draken set, and then you could use the Kirin chest piece. Right, if you use the Kirin chest piece with the Draken set, that would give you the free element unlock as well. You just wouldn't have critical element, so you wouldn't be doing quite as much damage as you're doing here with the Kaiser setup. Okay, so we've established that Zireael is your best option for elementalist damage and your best option for dragon damage now. There's one more build I want to show you, and this is for players who want a lot of defense. So I'm showing you a Geralt build, and it's not even a kind of like just for fun casual build. This is seriously your best option for defense in my opinion. Take a look at it. So we're getting non-elemental boost because it's very cheap to build non-elemental boost. That's always what's given the non-elemental boost its advantage in the game for so long. But notice we've also managed to build Divine Blessing, and then this set comes with health boost, recovery speed, and super recovery. Meanwhile, you're still getting Marathon Runner, which is relevant to the dual blades because it keeps you in demon mode longer. You've got Crit Eye 4, Attack Boost 4, Weakness Exploit 3. So what you could do if you really wanted to is you could drop some of that protection and take 2 levels of crit boost. This would increase the damage output on this build, but often when you're focusing on defense, you really do want Divine Blessing level 3. It's one of the best defensive skills in the game. And yeah, this is going to be a rare situation where the Geralt armor set is just really, really well set up for using dual blades because of Marathon Runner, Weakness Exploit. It does give you attack boost, it does give you some crit eye, so it's just a perfect defensive build for a dual blade user. So here it is what I would consider probably your best option for a defensive dual blade build. Alright, and that is all 3 of the dual blade builds I wanted to show you. Let me know what you thought of these, let me know what you would like to see next. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.